Sony has divided its camera lineups into two principal families in recent years, the Alpha 7 family, which comprises high-end full-frame cameras, and the ZV models, which are aimed at vloggers. These models are intended for usage by mobile content developers. But what happens if you combine those two ranges into a single camera? The ZV E1 is the answer to that question. In some aspects, it is the spiritual heir of the A7C. It's small, has all of the vlogger-friendly features of the other ZV models, but it also boasts a full-frame sensor, a strong image processor, and an E-mount for interchangeable lenses. It attempts to be the best of both worlds by providing a powerful but simple-to-use camera in a small package. Sony isn't the first company to cram a full-frame sensor into a small camera chassis. In fact, the entire A7 lineup is relatively small. But there was the A7C when it came to impossible levels of compactness. It was released practically as a teaser for what was to come from Sony, but the popular consensus was that it wasn't a proper alpha. So it makes natural that Sony tried again, this time shrinking it and rebranding it as part of the ZV series. However, there is no disputing the Alpha series effect on the camera. Inside, it has the same sensor as the A7S III and even has the Alpha logo on the front of the body. The ZV-1F was introduced as a gateway camera for creators who shoot on their phones, whilst the ZV E1 appears to be an entrance into Sony's world of interchangeable lens-compatible E-mount full-frame real alphas. We are not exaggerating when we say that this camera is small. It's small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, and it's surprisingly light for a full-frame camera. It doesn't have the same classic appeal as the A7C, but if your main goal is to have a decent, powerful camera that's also quite portable, the ZV E1 is the camera for you. Of course, the lens you use with it will influence how small it is. Many of Sony's G Master lenses are rather large and hefty, which alters the overall feel of the camera. Nonetheless, we found it to be pleasant to use and have worn it around our necks with the 24-70mm G Master f2.8 lens connected without pain. Given the target market, this is a really positive thing. You want to be able to utilize it without effort while holding it in your hand. In terms of ports, there is both flexibility and limitation. The latter is, of course, due to the camera's small size. It indicates there is only one SDXC SDHC slot and no CF Express card support. In addition, instead of a full-sized HDMI port, you receive a micro HDMI port. However, there are two 3.5mm connections, one for audio in and one for audio out, as well as a USB-C port for charging, data transfer, and enabling the camera's plug-and-play webcam capability. Simply plug it into your PC or Mac and use it as your webcam for Zoom or Teams calls. In addition, the camera incorporates a true fully articulating touchscreen display. We'll go through its UI and control system in more detail later, but the screen can be flipped to face forward, backward, or any angle in between. Again, for the sake of compactness, there is no EVF on this camera. The user interface has been adjusted and revamped to make changing settings simple, with the ZV E1 striving to maintain the focus on being a camera for rapid, easy shooting. That means you can change the most crucial settings with a single tap or swipe of the touchscreen. Columns of simple square icons on the left and right sides of the touchscreen provide access to these critical controls. Changing the shooting mode so that you may rapidly switch between intelligent auto, program auto, or aperture, shutter, or exposure priority modes is standard. There are also quick icons for changing the creative look, which direction the microphone is picking up audio from, switching between subject recognition options, and enabling and disabling the product showcase mode. Along the bottom is a row of more important buttons, which includes the ISO, shutter speed, white balance, and aperture dials. After you've made your choice, you can use the touchscreen again or the control wheel on the rear of the camera. Sony uses the ZV E1 to demonstrate that it knows how to show restraint and simplify things for those who aren't old-school photography fans, as this revolving dial is the only one on the camera. Having said that, there are enough buttons to be functional without seeming overburdened. On the top of the grip, the off-on switch and zoom rocker surround the shutter button, making them easy to reach with your right index finger. Aside from those, there is a movie record button on top that must be hit to begin recording, even when in movie mode. A background defocus button toggles on a heavy background blur for when you want to add effective separation between you and your background, or simply ensure that the subject talent is the focus, and a 3-point slider switch for switching between stills, video, and S&Q modes. Finally, we're pleased to see that the menu button is in a convenient location on the right side, within easy reach of our right thumb. This has traditionally been tucked away on the left-hand side of alpha cameras, which we have found to be inconvenient in usage. The automatic subject identification, tracking, and autofocusing capabilities of the ZV E1 are what make it such a fantastic camera to use on a daily basis. In fact, we could confidently leave autofocus on and let it do its job for much of what we wanted to do with it, whether it was video or stills. It would swiftly and consistently pick out the topic, focus on it, and generate a gorgeous background blur when recording things for our YouTube channel. We rarely had to use the shutter button or switch to manual focus to help us focus. With product showcase mode enabled, we were able to face the camera, lift a product to the lens, and the ZV E1 detected it, quickly switched focus, and then returned focus to our face when the product was removed. Many of these features have been standard on Sony cameras for several years, but subject identification is a relatively new addition. The ZV E1 employs the same sensor, image processing, and artificial intelligence as the most recent full-frame Alpha 7R. That is, it recognizes not only features and eyes, but also the important components of the human body, allowing it to keep people in focus even if they are not facing the camera or if their face is obscured by anything else. It's an especially useful feature if you're photographing someone jogging, strolling, or doing anything other than a portrait. It can currently identify animals, birds, planes, cars, trains, and insects. All you have to do is quickly choose the type of acknowledgement you want, and you're ready to go. Overall, it's quite effective and works nicely in video mode. Stills may yield uneven results, with the camera straining to automatically lock on and track a child swinging up and down on a park swing. Despite its small size, the camera contains several powerful and capable internals. Unlike the A7C, there's no sense of being shortchanged on video capabilities. Do you want high-quality video? There is 10-bit support, and you can shoot at 4K 60 frames per second. In reality, Sony is planning to release a software update in a few months that will bring 4K 120 frames per second to the camera. We've already discussed autofocusing and real-time tracking, which are important parts of the experience because they make shooting anything quick and straightforward. We could leave the autofocus on most of the time and rarely had to use the manual focus, even for very close-up little things like budding leaves on a tree/plant. It's also not surprising given that the camera employs the same AI-enhanced Bion's XR picture processor as the considerably more costly A7RV. It includes a zoom lever, so you can digitally zoom up to 1.5x even if you're using a wide-angle primary lens. However, there is a quality loss when using this setting. Images and video appear less detailed and overly sharpened, which is very certainly due to the sensor's low resolution. It's the 12-megapixel sensor that could be a deal-breaker, at least for photographers. It uses the same sensor as the Sony A7S III, which is wonderful for video and low-light performance, but if you want to get closer to distant subjects, you'll need a decent zoom lens. Unlike the A7R series, it cannot rely on more pixels to provide fine digital zoom. That's not to say it can't take good stills. It can. In reality, because to its huge sensor, excellent focusing, depth of field, and color reproduction, it is without a doubt the most powerful camera in the ZV line for photography. Overall, image and video quality is superb, with great depth of focus and rich, but not unrealistic, colors. It seemed to struggle with revealing our face at points, sometimes overexposing it and softening it to give it an extremely smooth and contrasty feel with little detail. However, this only seems to happen on rare instances when features like the product showcase mode were active. Stabilization is another good element of the camera, with the camera actively smoothing down handshake pretty pleasantly, allowing you to shoot handheld. It also boasts 2 new automated framing capabilities that operate when the camera is connected to a tripod. It can be feature-timed so that it crops into the frame at regular intervals to give some dynamic movement to your static interview or talking head clips. You can also utilize an auto-framing tool to maintain a subject framed and central even when it moves. It's similar to the Mac iPad center stage. Our regular workflow consists of shooting hosted YouTube videos with plenty of pretty close product shots, mostly in 4K 50 frames per second, taken indoors with artificial lighting in a studio setup, and it handles those demands admirably. The battery lasted approximately as long as any other camera we've tested in recent years, easily handling all of the B-roll and A-roll needed for a full 10-minute video. That indicates that even shooting internally at 4K 50 frames per second for 30 to 45 minutes did not deplete the battery. Furthermore, because it features a USB-C connector with power delivery capability, you can just plug it into a phone or laptop charger to recharge it again. There's no doubting the ZV E1's allure. Sony has built a super portable powerhouse of a camera that's also, as Sony cameras go, simple to operate by cramming so many of its best features into such a small package. It's almost as if Sony took components from the ZV, A7S III, and A7RV to produce a camera that combines the greatest features of all three. It's a fantastic tiny camera. It can accomplish a lot, including outstanding automatic focusing, object identification, and background blur, and it even caters to professionals with high bitrate video recording capabilities and excellent stabilization. However, there is one stumbling block: the price. With a recommended retail price of €2,700 in Europe for the body alone, it's clearly entering alpha territory and departing from the rest of the ZV series, which is far cheaper. That will make it difficult to sell to its intended audience, but if you have the cash and want a feature-packed all-rounder, there's a lot to like here.